Guys, I am exhausted, but I have to do this video today because to me it's very important that the people who, especially people who have not at all been red-pilled, I hope they get something out of this. They need to know what kind of characters are leading the government right now, are leading the world right now. And the two I'm going to cover in today's video are Dr. Anthony Fauci, head doctor in the coronavirus task force in the US, and the head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom. This is by no means a complete look at the backgrounds of these guys. By no means. Just a little taste so that you can know who the people are that are guiding policy right now, that are actually kind of, by extension, in charge of our economy and our children and our future health and our current health. It's very important. Knowing that that's the position they're in, listen to what I'm about to present and ask yourself, how could this possibly happen? And most importantly, should anyone trust these people? Okay, first thing we're going to look at is some clips from this excellent 13-minute mini documentary on Tedros Adhanom, the leader of the World Health Organization. It's by John Martin, and I will link to this in the description box. There is so much in this little video, but I'm only going to take a few minutes because I only want to concentrate on the things that Tedros Adhanom did while he was head of Ethiopia's Ministry of Health. It's just mind-boggling, even this little bit, but there's so much more. All right, here you go, couple minutes for you.
Tedros, as well as being the first World Health Organization director without a medical degree, also has somewhat of a political background. On his online biography, you can see that he was the Ethiopian health minister from 2002 to 2012. Tedros also happens to be a member of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. It was founded as a communist revolutionary party that came to power in 1991. The Tigray represent only 6% of the population of Ethiopia. One of the major ethnic groups are the Amhara. The TPLF 1968 manifesto declared the Amhara people to be their eternal enemy. And Tedros himself hails from the Tigray region and was a senior member of the party when it came to power. Just how senior was he? Well, this Ethiopian newspaper lists him as the third most important member of the Politburo, which gives the impression he was slightly more important than just a medical administrator. The TPLF was listed as a terrorist organization by the US government in the 90s, and it's still listed as a terrorist organization in the Global Terror Database, because it has this unfortunate habit of carrying out armed assaults in rural areas. The Amhara people under the new government have reported systematic discrimination and human rights abuses. Human Rights Watch in 2010 wrote about how aid in the form of food and fertilizer was being withheld from Amhara villages if they had associations with the opposition party. Other forms of aid denial involved refusing emergency healthcare to children, which was carried out by the same ministry at the time led by Tedros Adhanom, current director of the WHO. The Amhara People's Union, an activist group based in Washington, issued many other accusations of human rights abuses against the TPLF, including noting that during this time, birth rates in the Amhara region was lower than every other region, and that around 2 million Amhara simply disappeared from the population census, which was admitted in Parliament in this video. But not content with denying aid to political dissidents, Tedros also spent a lot of his time as health minister covering up epidemics in Ethiopia. There was a cholera outbreak that spread through the region in 2007, which infected thousands of people in neighboring countries in East Africa. But when it spread to Ethiopia, the Ministry of Health tactic was to rename the disease AWD, acute watery diarrhea, instead, meaning that on paper, all the neighboring countries had cholera epidemics, but Ethiopia didn't. International organizations were pressured not to call it cholera, even though the UN tested it themselves and found cholera, and were told not to reveal the real number of infected. Another stunning victory for the health minister. Also, the deadly famine that struck Ethiopia in the 1980s, which it's still associated with, is not entirely a thing of the past. The WHO itself, in its reports, after pages and pages of gushing reviews on how great Ethiopia's health sector is, admitted in 2016 that at least 8.6 million people in rural Ethiopia still needed food aid to survive, and said that the situation had barely improved for 4 years, so that after the end of Tedros's illustrious term as health minister, he could boast a mere 8% of the population that would starve to death without foreign aid. And so, after these shining accomplishments in health, Tedros moved on to bigger and better things.
Did your jaw fall on the floor? He's practically a genocider. There's so much in there I can't recall. I'm exhausted. I can't recall. But the part about their fertility rates in that one area, I wonder what that was about. Were they perhaps giving them vaccines in that one area? The fact that he basically let them starve to death, the fact that he canceled programs for children's health. I mean, what kind of a man does this stuff? He was a Marxist revolutionary. Did you hear that off the top? He was in an organization that is a listed terror organization. Bearing all that in mind, how did he become head of the World Health Organization? Can you understand how broken a system must be, how corrupt to the core a system must be to put that man in charge of the World Health Organization? And now there he is at this moment in history for the pandemic. How can this be happening to us? I know how. It's been a very, very long, perhaps 100-year plan to subvert important positions and to carry through with a revolution that they started a long time ago. So that's one thing. Tedros Adhanom, you've just seen a little bit of how bad this guy is. And I strongly encourage you to go watch the rest of that documentary about Tedros Adhanom. 13 minutes of your life. Please go watch it. The guy's got all the sources in the description box below. You've seen how bad he is. Now, listen to Dr. Anthony Fauci, head of the Coronavirus Task Force. Listen to him talking about Tedros Adhanom.
Tedros is really an outstanding person. I've known him from the time that he was the Minister of Health of Ethiopia. I mean, obviously, over the years, anyone who says that the WHO has not had problems has not been watching the WHO. But I think under his leadership, they've done very well. He has been all over this. I was on the phone with him a few hours ago, leading a WHO call.
Transparency, sir?
No, I'm not talking about China. You asked me about Tedros.
World Health Organization praising China for its transparency and leadership on their response to the pandemic?
You know, I can't comment on that because, I mean, I don't have any viewpoint into it. I mean, I don't even know what your question is. Right.
He's an outstanding guy. He's wonderful. He's good. He likes him. Dr. Fauci respects Tedros Adhanom. Is he stupid? Maybe he just doesn't know, because maybe nobody's told him, because the journalists and reporters in this country, in this Western world, in the English-speaking media, they fail and fail and fail. A little more on Dr. Fauci. In this article from Science Speaks Global ID News, on May 17th, 2011, we learned that Dr. Fauci has been involved in the AIDS epidemic from the beginning. And it was just through luck that this Morbidity and Mortality Weekly report landed on his desk and reported 5 gay men from LA, otherwise healthy, presenting with this strange pneumonia. And so he got brought right in at the very beginning of the AIDS epidemic. Further in this article from Global ID News, we learn that Dr. Fauci was working with someone in his lab. I employed someone to help me out, a fellow in my lab, Mark Dybel, who later went on to become the U.S. Global AIDS Ambassador. They're the ones that presented the proposal for $15 billion over 5 years to start PEPFAR, the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. Who holds that post right now? Deborah Birx does. So Fauci's lab assistant, Mark Dybul, ended up being the first global ambassador on AIDS and chairman of PEPFAR, and now Deborah Birx is in that position. Isn't that funny? Weird. What's Mark Dybul doing now? Well, now he's still involved with AIDS in a different organization, and here's an article from February 2019 from something called Strategic Health Diplomacy, and he's giving an interview. He says that they should double down on the commitment to fight HIV/AIDS. Why do they need more money? Well, Mark Dybul tells us himself. We have more data showing no reduction in rates of HIV among young people for the past 15 years. That is a failure of HIV programs. They need more money to do nothing, to fail. Mark Dybul is now the executive director of Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria. So no wonder he wants more money. You remember this? You remember the circle of fraud? The money goes to the State Department, who then gives it to PEPFAR, who then disperses it to the Global Fund and other things. The Global Fund is overseen by the UN, who will not let anybody properly audit what happens to this money. So Mark Dybul went from PEPFAR to the Global Fund. He is deep, deep, deep in the circle of fraud. And of course, none of this could happen without people like Tedros Adhanom and the World Health Organization pushing, propagandizing everyone, lobbying politicians, making rules in their overseeing global government body that help funds and scammers that pretend to treat people with HIV/AIDS to get more money from the governments. And the US government is 90 billion or so taxpayer dollars into this thing already. And now here comes the director of the Global Fund saying we should double down on the commitment. I just want to point something out. This global ID news, why are they talking in 2011? Why are they talking to Dr. Fauci, who is an expert on AIDS? It might be because they had long-range plans and medical treatments, and especially injected medical treatments, would eventually lead to Bill Gates' current plan, which is to add ID chips into vaccines. ID 2020. I covered it in a previous video. One more thing about Dr. Fauci, and then I'll let you go. This is from 2013. Striving for the AIDS endgame, translating research promise into public health success. And he just talks about the people that are involved in PEPFAR. Again, President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Bill Melinda Gates Foundation, Clinton Health Access Initiative, and other programs. So I'm showing this to you to point out that there's more piggies at the trough, and as usual, it's the Clintons and Bill Gates, and of course the Global Fund, which I just talked about. I don't know how many of you know that along with the Clinton Foundation, they've got all kinds of other foundations like CHI, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, and then there's I can't even recall them. My brain is so fried right now. But just look it up. It's not just the one foundation. The Clintons are involved in everything. Everything. And just as I was coming to put this video together for you, someone pointed this out to me. President Obama is weighing in on a live chat with Steph Curry and Dr. Deep State Fauci. So there you go. Obama. And Obama's in this too. He promotes Bono's organization called RED, which is part of this whole network that I've been talking to you about. I mean, guys, it's exhausting. And I feel that it's truly difficult to cover this subject because it's like you have to tell the whole story in every video for people to get the true picture. What you have to understand, what people who are new to this have to understand is there is really a pretty small group of people who are trampling over the whole world. They really are. They are all connected. They have these foundations and they all donate to each other's foundations. And they all have multiple underling NGOs that they donate to, but really they control. And who knows? Who knows what those things are getting up to? That's exactly what we can't audit through this program right there. And add insult to injury, of course. All of these foundations are tax-free virtually and opaque. They are not subject to scrutiny in the ways they should be. So basically, we've got a case of oligarchs begging the government for taxpayer funding that they then take and put in foundations, and they use it as strategic investments to boost their own personal wealth. Literally, that's what they do. And what they're doing right now with obvious scammers like Tedros Adhanom, with human rights violators like Tedros Adhanom, is they are creating a new vaccine marketplace, complete with controlling the tests, which will tell you whether or not you have a positive or negative result, and then the treatment, and then the vaccine to prevent another outbreak. Who's doing the tests? Who made the tests? How can we be sure they aren't giving tons of false positives? How can we be sure they aren't just trying to scare us to death so that they can build a new multi-billion-dollar market? Just reflect on how horrifying of a person Tedros Adhanom is. And the fact that Dr. Fauci thinks he's a great guy. Think about Dr. Birx, Dr. Fauci, and this Mark Dybul. All of them involved in the same little incestuous circle of fraud. Sorry for yelling. This is their baby. This is how they make money. This is actually their job. None of them are actually doctors. None of them actually care about you. That's their scam. And they're doing it in full view of everybody because they've got the media under control. Okay, everybody. I'm going to stop talking now. Normally here I ask you to support my work through PayPal or through going to my website and getting my P.O. Box address. But you know what? I'm going to be here no matter what. And I think maybe it's time for a break on that. Everybody, unless you can afford it, I appreciate your thoughts, prayers, comments, and letters so very much. Somebody sent me a sampler, an embroidery sampler that their wife had made. God bless you, sir. I burst into tears opening that up. It's so beautiful. And I know how much you must have treasured it. And I will too. So guys, I'm emotional, yes. And I'm exhausted. I'm so exhausted. I just want to thank you very much for your contributions. But please, unless you can afford it, don't send anything. We are in a weird time. Keep your money right now, okay? Keep it. God bless you all. God bless you all. And we are going to get through this. We are going to get through this. But the normies, the people who haven't been red-pilled, they need to know the criminals in charge. They need to know. Until next time, peace out.